So a couple years ago, I was doing a musical in regional theater. Don't mean to brag. And it was one of those theater companies where like they had a big piece of land, so that's where like the actors stayed and where the theater was and where you rehearsed and all that stuff. And it was the actor housing used to be a mansion. You know, it was a very old piece of property, and so they sort of converted it to sort of upscale dorm rooms basically. And so I got my own little room that had just it was very sparse. It was just like a bed, a ceiling fan, a mirror, a dresser, and a little closet. But I was like, I have my own room. I was one of the few actors who didn't have to share a room, so I felt pretty good about myself. And then one night I was asleep, and I woke up, and I had this very weird sensation. It was sort of where I felt like someone was kneeling on my chest, and their face was right up against mine, and they were just sort of like sucking in, like they were trying to suck in my breath. And it was like super weird, and I like wanted to get up and move, but like someone was on my chest, so I couldn't. So I sort of like flailed a bit, and then just got tired and went back to sleep. But then when I woke up the next morning, I was having like breakfast with two friends of mine who were in the cast, and they both were from the area, so they had worked at this theater for years. And I sort of start telling them like this weird dream that I had last night, and they both like get like super excited, and they go, "Oh, you were visited by the ghosts last night?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" And they were like, "Yeah, this whole theater is haunted. You didn't know that?" And I was like, "Oh, my agent did not mention that." And so I was like, well, what do you mean this place is haunted? And they go on to tell me the story is apparently that this property, many hundreds of years ago, was a stop on the Underground Railroad. And what had happened was one night, some racist people in the town realized what was happening, so they like formed a mob, and they went to the property, and they tried to get the owners to give up these runaway slaves that they had, and the owners wouldn't do it. And so they set fire to a lot of the buildings, and so all the people who were hiding there died. And so the thing is that the ghosts of those people are still in the house, and they're trying to steal the breath of the people who stay in some of those rooms. And I was like, I really wish someone had told me this beforehand. And I was like, so this just happens? And like they're like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like when you see a ghost, all you're supposed to do is just say like, you're like, I'm not gonna hurt you, but you should move on, and that's it. I was like, oh, thanks for that advice. And then Michael, the guy, was like, the one building that was not burned down was the theater, and he said there's still a room, still one of the rooms is still there, and he had a key to it if we wanted to go check it out. And I was like, fuck yes, I want to check that out. So later that night, after rehearsal late at night, we're drinking and smoking and whatnot, and then we were like, all right, let's go over to the theater now and check out this little room. So we go into the theater, and the room is like behind the theater, and you have to unlock it. And so my friend, and it's like he opens up like just like one of those like doors on the floor kind of thing, and it just like it's like walking into blackness. So we go down there, and it leads to, there's just like a circular staircase to this small, probably about as wide as this stage, but just like a circular room. And there's just like some wires, one light bulb hanging down from a wire. There's just like sawdust and like piles of wood, and for some reason a couple weird like wire hangers. It was like we walked into Freddy Krueger's walk-in closet or something. So we're all just sitting there, and it's just sort of surreal because you're like, oh, people hung out here on the Underground Railroad, and you just start talking about like how lame racism is and like what happens when you die and all that stuff. And so, and we're just sort of talking, and then after a while, like all the sort of like old cobwebs just suddenly, it gets super cold, and they all just sort of like drift a little bit as if there's a breeze, but we're in a basement, so there's no possible breeze. And then Jessica, the girl, and I, without saying or anything, and I didn't even thought about it, I literally just like stood up. I remember thinking like, my nipples are rock hard right now. But it was just so alarming because I did not think about it. I just stood up, and Jessica looked as surprised as I was. And so I just looked at her and I went, did you mean to stand up right now? And she just went, I'm standing. And then Michael was like, oh, the ghosts are here, awesome. Everyone, all of us, except for Michael, are like, let's get the hell out of here. So so like we run out there while Michael's like, I gotta close up. But like we're outside and we're all like freaked out. We're like, oh my God, we just saw a ghost. That's crazy. And we're just like, oh, like trying to calm down. And then suddenly it's like, all right, we got to go back to bed. And like we leave the theater. We're like, oh, we're glad we're leaving that haunted building. And then I realized like we're going into another building that we know is haunted. So somehow I went to bed. I managed to go to sleep that night. But a couple nights later, I woke up again in the middle of the night, and I looked up above me, and the ceiling fan, which was going, the little metal chain, was swinging back and forth as if someone was hitting it. And I happened to look at the long mirror across on the side of the wall, that had the reflection of it, and in that I saw like a silhouette standing over me hitting it. So I was totally freaked out, and I just, in a stage whisper, just went, hey. It's cool that you're here. I'm not gonna do anything, but maybe I don't know. Maybe you should move on. There's nothing. There's really not a lot going on here for you. And I know this sounds weird, but as soon as I said that, in the reflection, the shadow walked out of the mirror. The chain immediately stopped swinging, and then the closet door that I had just like opened a little bit, and I never was visited by anyone ever again.